I made a working compact redstone billboard with a range of effects to demonstrate customizable faces and a few extra features. In this video, I will walk you through why I made it, how it works, how to use it, and most importantly, whether it's actually practical or not. So why did I make it? I've always had a passion for making redstone contraptions, but I never really had enough motivation or a good enough reason to dig deeper into it. That changed recently when I demonstrated my first redstone bulb display on Reddit. While I was posting it, I came up with a thought. What if I could have movable text in a compact area? I wanted something small enough to use in survival and integrate it into my builds without having to dedicate a massive amount of space to it. Before starting this project, I did a pretty deep search on YouTube, and to my surprise, I couldn't find anyone who had tried to make a, practical yet small billboard using just vanilla redstone. Don't get me wrong, there were plenty of impressive display designs, but they were either too large to realistically build in survival, or the displays were too small to be practical for showing longer text. So I started working. Let's talk about how it works. At first glance, this machine might look complicated because everything is so compact and compressed. But the core solution is, pretty simple. Yeah, I use feed tapes. Feed tape display have been around for quite some time. Many people have built feed tape billboards using normal blocks, and there are also designs using redstone lamps. And as I mentioned, those are perfectly good designs. But unlike some people who enjoy building huge contraptions, I'm the opposite. Big things always hurt. Well, to be more precise, huge contraptions hurt my brain. Yeah, what else did you think of, I mean? My base design uses a simple feed tape consisting of 41 blocks in total, giving us 8 distinct faces, with each face being 5 blocks long. One side of the feed tape is activated directly by a redstone signal, while the other 3 sections react to an observer pulse. So essentially, we have 1 active section and 3 reactive sections working together to create the feed tape. Without a signal, the feed tape won't move, as simple as it is. This allows me to control how many blocks it moves depending on the redstone signals being provided. So, we are going to automate the feed tape. Once the basic feed tape was working, I needed to automate it. And the best solution for that was a hopper clock. By using the right number of items in the hopper clock, I was able to create a perfectly timed feed tape revolution. Then, with the help of another hopper clock, I created a simple phase system. Move 5 blocks, stop for a while, repeat. And this continues until the feed tape is manually stopped. With that, the basic billboard functionality was complete. Now, here come the effects. After finishing the core functionality, it was time to add some custom effects. My design features 2 main effects, blinking and wave. And there is also a combined mode that uses both effects on each face. The way the effects work is pretty simple. If you remember the second hopper clock I mentioned earlier, it deliberately has a longer off state because of how hopper clocks work. And we can use that off state to run an effect. Once the effect is finished, the clock changes state, letting the feed tape to rotate to the next face, and the process continues. Blinking effect. For the blinking effect, I used another hopper clock that continuously switches between on and off, along with a secondary clock synchronized with our original feed tape clock. There are pistons positioned behind the feed tape. When the feed tape stops, these pistons push and pull the blocks to create the blinking effect. And the display has defined segments, and because pistons have limitations on how many blocks they can push or pull, these segments actually work out pretty conveniently. So while the effect is active, the display blinks. And once the effect is finished, the feed tape clock activates, letting the next phase to occur, revealing another phase. There are several logic gates implemented throughout the design to prevent piston jamming and feed tape jams. For example, an AND gate ensures that when the feed tape clock sends a signal telling the tape to move, it blocks any signal that would activate the blinking effect. With that said, let's jump to the next effect. So for the wave effect, I use the same basic mechanism, but this one gets a little bit more complicated because we need to create an actual wave. Despite creating corresponding piston having its own segment, the pistons can move independently without interfering with one another. And with the help of observer chains, I was able to create the wave effect. But just like a normal wave that comes and goes, the same thing needs to happen here. An observer pulse causes a sticky piston to release the block it's holding. But I didn't want the piston to simply push the blocks once. I wanted them to push, stay in position, return. That meant I needed a second row of pistons. However, because of piston block pushing limitations, I couldn't simply place another row of observer chains on top of the piston because they would just stick to the slime. Putting them underneath wasn't possible either. It was already blocked. So instead, I used double pistons. These pistons need to grab the block back into their original positions, but they also need to retract properly afterward to prevent piston jamming. So we need multiple pulses here. First is the piston to push and release the block. Then the second row of pistons grab the block and bring it back into its original position without sticking to it. And then those pistons will retract to their original state. With some adjustments to the observer chain, I was able to create the required sequence. So the blocks get pushed and released. Then the second row retracts and grabs them back into their original position. I also had to come up with a mechanism where we only need one observer pulse for the first row, but 3 pulses for the second row. And that gives us the complete satisfying wave effect. This entire process is controlled by a single hopper clock, by the way. When the clock is on, the wave effect continues, and when it turns off, the effect is disabled. And if you turn it off halfway through the effect, it won't ruin the chain. Now we have a working feed tape and several corresponding effects. But how do we select them properly? We can't simply activate all of them at the same time because they would interfere with each other. So for that, we need an XOR gate. If you have little to no knowledge about logic gates, Matt Badthings has a ton of videos explaining them. I'll provide one of his videos in the description, or you can click the link here. Now, back to the XOR gates. Technically, we could use a button selector panel for this. The button selector uses mutually exclusive inputs, effectively providing XOR style selection. However, because I wanted to make the entire contraption as compact as possible, a normal button selector panel simply wasn't compact enough to fit inside the contraption. I spent quite some time looking for a compact solution on Reddit, YouTube, Planet Minecraft, and pretty much everywhere. And honestly, I was almost hopeless. Then, right when I had almost given up, I found a red coder contraption presented by Jazzy, and I immediately got to work adapting it. So instead of using an item frame, just like how he demonstrated, I used a crafter. First, because it looks cool, and second, because it's a 1x1 button panel. A crafter can produce different comparative signal strengths depending on which slots are filled or empty. Using that logic, I created a 4x4 button panel that represents my 4 custom modes. I think I might have over-engineered this a little because I just realized there isn't actually a need for a redstone lamp in this particular setup. I will probably improve this before I publish a tutorial, I don't know. But either way, the selector is connected to copper bulbs, with each corresponding output connected to its respective mode. But wait, we missed one more mode. So technically, everything should work now, right? Well, kind of. We forgot that we have our third effect mode, blinking and wave combined. So, is it mathematically possible? Let's find out. In this demonstration, instead of using seconds, we are going to use items in the hoppers, so timing is easier to understand and measure. Alright, so hear me out. One feed tape phase takes 24 items, and if we divide that by 2, we get 12 items for changing the phase, and 12 items for idle period. And that's one normal phase. But both the blinking and wave effects also use the hopper clock containing 24 items. So theoretically, we should be able to create a flip-flop situation where 12 items are used for moving the feed tape and 12 items are used for running the effects. However, when we combine both effects, things get a little bit more complicated. We have 2 choices. We could either cut the timing in half, which would interrupt the wave effect halfway through and wouldn't be very practical. Or we could give the combined effect a full 24 item period and give the feed tape 12 items to move. That gives us a total of 36 items. But here's the catch. Hopper clocks generally rely on one hopper becoming completely empty before the other change states. Because of this, we end up getting 1.5 rotation instead of 1 complete rotation for our phases. So we need to add another 12 items to make the timing evenly divisible. That gives us 48 items in total. 24 items for the feed tape and 24 items for the combined effects. But another problem appears. Since we now have 24 items dedicated to the feed tape rotation, that would result in 2 phase rotations instead of 1. And obviously, We need to fix that. Okay, hear me out. By using a constantly running 24-item hopper clock, we can solve this problem. When the combined effect is selected, this 24-item hopper clock continues running constantly, regardless of whether it is currently turning on or off in the combined effects. At the same time, we add a safety switch using a sticky piston and slime blocks to control the timing precisely. This safety switch is activated by our main 48-item hopper clock, which is responsible for the combined effects and the timing of the rotation. When the main clock enters its effect state, it sends a signal to the feed tape clock to stop the rotation and enables the safety switch. Since the 24-item clock is running in parallel with the 48-item clock, and 24 is evenly divisible into 48, so the wave and blinking effect can stay synchronized. When the 48-item clock turns off, our feed tape clock doesn't simply start immediately. Remember, the 24-item clock has been running constantly. While it's running, its off state triggers a redstone line that activates a blockage toward the comparator responsible for activating the feed tape. And at the same time, to make the system as efficient as possible, this also activates the blinking effect. Once the effect state ends, the feed tape is activated. So basically, instead of wasting that extra idle gap, we are using it for blinking effect. This prevents a second revolution of the feed tape while also filling the otherwise unused idle time. And this gives us blinking, wave, blinking again, and phase change. Whew! After finishing the entire design, it finally felt ready. I was about to test everything until I noticed the very big elephant in the room, or in this case, the sniffer. Let's go back to our feed tape. It consists of 41 blocks, giving us 8 faces plus 1 extra block needed for the tape to function. Because of that extra block, the feed tape would gradually fall out of sync. Every full revolution would add 1 extra block of movement, causing the display to become slightly misaligned each time. By the time I implemented the entire system, it was simply too late to redesign everything around the more efficient 40-block feed tape. My reaction to this was, oh my god, painful, but I didn't give it up yet. Every problem comes with a solution, and I ended up finding a surprisingly simple one. Instead of forcibly stopping the feed tape at the correct time, I added 1 extra movement for the extra block. This means one section has to move 6 blocks instead of 5. However, not every section needs to do this. The last phase is the one that needs the extra movement. With that logic, I added 1 redstone block to the corresponding row, and each time the feed tape reaches the position where the extra movement is required, it rings a bell, creating a calibrated skulk vibration. Somebody finally used these in a contraption. That vibration is then linked to the feed tape mechanism. All of this happens while the feed tape clock has stopped the rotation and is in its idle state, so it won't interfere with the other modes. Simple, easy, and fast enough. And most importantly, the feed tape stays synchronized. Now that we have all 4 modes working, seeing the final results was incredibly satisfying, not gonna lie. But how do we actually change the faces? Nobody wants to risk breaking the feed tape or accidentally placing blocks in the wrong position. Since we're using redstone blocks to display the text, editing the display directly would be pretty risky. So I added a toggleable button that activates or deactivates a skulk sensor again, and I used the top side of the contraption as our editing canvas. And it's pretty easy to work with. But how do we move to the next face after editing one? That's where the use of a skulk sensor comes handy. By using a specific signal strength, the skulk sensor can be configured to respond only to a specific type of vibration. For example, using an item such as a spyglass or good horn. Every time you use the item, one phase is activated and the next phase is revealed. It's as easy as that. Even after adding all of those features, I still felt like something was missing. So I added a player attractor mechanism as well. It uses a simple contraption that activates a skulk sensor when a player is flying within a elytra nearby. It's also spam-proof, and it can play music when activated. I'll probably make this toggleable in the future too. Maybe, I don't know. However, to make it work efficiently over a larger area, you might need additional antennas to detect players from farther away. First thing first, for everyone who watched all the way to this point, I really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this walkthrough so YouTube can recommend it to other people. Thank you. Back to the video. Once you understand the core principle of the contraption, you can easily interact with all of these modes. All you have to do, as indicated on the signs, is leave empty slots according to the number shown on each side. For example, if I want to use a blinking effect, I simply enable that mode and turn the billboard on. So this lever is a safety switch. Its purpose is to prevent the feed tape from randomly activating while an effect is running or while you're changing modes. To avoid any risks, I recommend always turning the safety switch off, selecting your desired mode, and then turning it back on. Even though I've also implemented a delay mechanism to prevent accidental spamming, all combined with a perfectly in sync clock. Though this procedure is still the safest way to operate it. As for editing mode, make sure there are no active effects before entering it. I'll try to make this system more efficient in the future, but this is how it currently works. Also, editing mode requires the safety switch to be on, so don't forget that. For editing, I've marked each face with a different color. Always make sure you're editing the correct face while avoiding interference with the others. There is also an orange line that's part of the extra row of blocks. Do not edit anything on this line. Again, do not edit anything on this line. And as I mentioned earlier, the spyglass and ghost horn mechanism is also spam proof. So repeatedly using them won't cause the feed tape to fall out of sync. And that's it. Is it practical? Well, it really depends on your perspective. Personally, I think this billboard is a fun and cool way to display your shop, company, or even a message or advertisement to players in your community. I tried my best to squeeze as much functionality as possible into a small space, so the machine remains both survival friendly and manageable. Keep in mind, some servers prohibit the use of redstone clocks or massive redstone machines, so I tried to use the most efficient mechanism possible. This contraption operates in a step-by-step process, meaning that not many blocks are activated at the same time. Use it at your own risk. I originally built this billboard for a future company hub on a Minecraft SMP. I want to be able to display different company names on the same physical display instead of having to build separate sign or billboard for every company. You can probably find plenty of other practical uses for it too, and at the end of the day, it's really up to you. So what's next? So here we are. That's the full walkthrough of this compact redstone billboard. A full tutorial and map download will be coming soon. I also want to make it possible if you want to expand the display. Thanks for watching and for making it all the way through. Make sure to hit that subscribe button because I'll probably be designing more redstone contraptions in the future. So if you're interested in redstone, stay tuned. Have a good time. Bye.